And with Christmas coming, Shannon, have you been immersing yourself in any sort of Dickensian style novels at all?
No. Yes, I have. Thank you, Gareth, for the lead-in. Oh my God, I was so slow on that. I'll wait for Patrick to finish laughing.
See, it's like we can read each other's minds. 2 years of podcasting, we're like a well-oiled machine at this point.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to The Pleasure of the Text, a shared imagined space where readers and writers make meaning together. We're your hosts, Shannon and Gareth, and today we are joined by the lovely Patrick again. Welcome back, Patrick, and as you would have heard as a very great intro, Patrick has the most amazing laugh, and we're already having great conversations and laughing pieces. We're here today to share with you. It is our 6-month catch up after we set our goals for the year. We talked about our writing goals and reading goals, and we're going to have a life catch up and see where we are, on our ambitious goals that we set in January, and now it is August. So, would you like to start off today, Gareth, with, I think you're mentioning about how you have improved significantly, something not related to reading or writing, but a bit of fun?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say hello to everyone and just, make the point that I'm in my music room. Stability is a wonderful thing. Shannon's in a best and less change room. And Patrick appears to be in like a New York studio, some sort of art place, perhaps, for those not watching on YouTube. He has flowers behind him. I think they're flowers or trinkets.
It's the person who was in the bedroom. I think like two tenants before me had painted roses on the wall, and so it's just
mental health
over.
issues.
I didn't know you could even paint walls in Australia as a tenant. Crazy.
Yeah. It was just because of the guy who owns the house knew the person was like, yeah, go ahead and do whatever you want. So.
Oh, that's great.
So I left them.
Are you going to paint
like,
over
cover them
Patrick?
Up. Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah. Well, now I've completely forgotten, now that I've talked about
it was Mario Kart, Gareth. We were talking about Mario Kart.
That's right. I have been playing a lot of Mario Kart. Nintendo give us some money. And it's a wonderful game. And I've learned all these tricks, all these tactics, which have made me a much better racer. I'm a Diddy Kong man. I like to be the little chimp and ride a little Vespa. And I find that's the key to my success. So I didn't actually, list that as a goal for the year, but I feel it's possibly the thing that I've most achieved. So I'm quite proud of it. And maybe we could go back and edit the old video and we could just do a cut in of me going, I'd like to get better at Mario Kart.
We should have like a little zoomie of you, Diddy Kong, in a Vespa going across the screen.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to bring that up because Patrick used to live with us, everyone. And the amount of times that we have played Mario Kart, there's been a lot of anger and anxiety because my partner Luke just smashes everyone. And there was this one time on the Rainbow Road journey that Patrick somehow just swept in on a ray of a rainbow and beat us all. It was a tragic day in the Shannon, Luke, Patrick household.
Oh, it was the
beginning of your downfall,
wasn't it? What are you talking about?
And from those heady days living on an island, you ended up in a best and less change room. And it all began, perhaps, with that game of Mario Kart.
Patrick beat me on the Rainbow Road.
Yeah. And that could be the name of your autobiography, My Journey on the Rainbow Road.
Ooh.
Oh, that's a great idea.
A bit misleading, actually, but whatever.
It kind of sounds like the Beatles in an Octopus Garden song. I also like that title.
Yeah, it's a good song.
It's funny
I might
that you
also
mentioned
have to get high to write it. So you go.
That song was playing at the market when I was working there yesterday. So was great.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So, Patrick, you moved to Tasmania and you're working in a market and you're doing coffee.
I did, and I am. It's a lot different side of coffee than what I was doing before. So it's mostly just roasting coffee now and dealing with warehouse shenanigans of distributing coffee to people. And it's very little of the customer facing barista work that I used to do, which is, I think, a very good change for this and just for like balance in general and allowing me time to not be emotionally drained from having to work with customers, I guess.
Well, thank you. You are providing a great service. We can see the coffee cup. We would be nothing without you, Patrick. Thank you to our sponsor, coffee.
It's interesting, isn't it? Shannon and I, we have our thing, our back and forth. And it's gotten pretty smooth over the years. No one would agree with that. But it's gotten pretty smooth over the years. And then you put in a third person, and it's impossible to know when to speak.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Pregnant pauses.
They make it more exciting, really.
It is difficult as well. Not that we're going to notice on the YouTube when we watch on YouTube, but Patrick, you're like a little human blob on my screen, so I can just see
nice.
the slit of your mouth and the rim of your glasses. And so I kind of have to guess when you're going to like lean in and talk.
Is it if I move myself higher, is that better or?
No, it's just connection. It's just because you're down in Tasmania where nothing really happens.
That's not great.
So how has life in Tasmania been for your writing, Patrick?
It's been really good. This is kind of besides the point, but something that I noticed recently, I was kind of losing hair when I was living in Queensland on the island. I think just because of how hot and humid it was. And since moving down this way, my hair's been growing back, which is great.
It was probably the stress of living with Shannon and Luke.
And
now you're...
Oh, please. I want to say thank you to our sponsors, Travel to Tasmania, partnered with...
Rogaine, the Tasmanian health restoration company.
That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, it's been really good. I think that... I think I am in a very different place than where I was in this time, even last year, but then also I would even say 6 months ago. I think the feeling of enjoying the environment that I'm in as well, and not to discount at all how much I enjoyed being on the island with Luke and Shannon in any way. I think the humidity, when I say environment, it's more so, I think the weather and the geography, the pace of life as well. Even though the island was pretty slow, I think this is a lot slower in a very interesting way. And also, I think what that's done maybe is really slowed down my own inner critic. I think it's kind of a lot more chill. It's not as hyper vigilant as what it used to be. And I don't know if that was because of just whatever the space I was in, like mentally during that time. Or if it's just like, if Australia is already chill, Tasmania is a lot more chill. And so I think that has quieted down and calmed down a lot of that inner critic that I have dealt with quite a bit in the past, but now I'm kind of viewing it in a very different way than I kind of like, what's the word to say? A very aggressive, counterproductive voice is now just like a little chihuahua that goes like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I'm like, "Oh, you're so cute. I can tone you down."
So what you're
So it's
talking about, Patrick, is your conscious mind.
Yes.
And it's noticing different things now.
Mm,
Because that inner critic is most likely occurring, it's present and spinning around, skittering around your brain. But for some reason you're not hooking into it anymore. You're hooking into this charming, non-critical thought that just pops in with a coffee and a pregnant pause and some grinding. And apparently it's atmospheric.
I don't know how it is, because I think it's definitely those layers. I would say it's a many layered cake, so to speak. And I agree with you on that. And I also think that it's noticing when I'm getting latched into it and when I am choosing to follow along with it and how long I want to hold on to that, versus being in that moment of hearing that critic come in and then going like, how much do I want to hold on to this and how far do I want this to take me? And just pausing, taking a sip of water, moving around, stretching out, readjusting myself, and then continuing to pick up wherever that creativity was left off.
That sounds really healthy. I always notice when we podcast, Shannon is so still, and I have quite a lot of internet problems, so I can never tell when she's frozen. She has an eerie calm about her. She doesn't even blink. It's extraordinary. I'm nodding and twitching and scratching myself, and she's just like Buddha.
When you are the editor, Gareth, you appreciate the person that sits still because it makes it easier to combine the shots.
Yeah.
There's
well, sorry about that.
Call when she plays Nintendo Switch on Mario Kart Racing. It's like
it just gets so intense.
Oh yeah. It's like, oh, it's really on now if Shannon's quiet because Luke's just having a great old time.
Yeah, Luke's actually having fun, and I'm sitting there like, I'm gonna beat you.
It is a vexing game. So we've all been playing a lot of Mario Kart. Now this is obviously, we were doing the writing solutions podcast back in January. And I just want to, basically put you guys on the spot and talk about one of your resolutions, which was to, actually there were two, and I feel I should include myself in this. I said we've got to have Patrick on the podcast more often. I feel like that hasn't happened. So we're going to have to work on, one more time. But and the other one is that you guys were going to catch up fortnightly to go through your work together. I realize you're in different locations now, which problematizes that. But how has that been going?
Can I start? It hasn't been going. I think we managed it 2 times, Patrick, after we said it. Yeah. And beyond live stuff, obviously, I think preventing it. There is no stability really with myself. I'm going to put my under the bus on that. I'm flitting off every weekend or other weekend, getting about. And then also on top of that, we were moving houses, moving states. And there was a lot of stuff going on. But then I'm not sure if either one of us was really ready for the commitment to the other person. I certainly was, and I wasn't putting enough writing time to come to the table with something to share.
Okay, so that leads us to one of our other ones, which is showing up and atomic habits. Now, for someone who's working as much as you are, Shannon, atomic habits are incredibly important. How has that been going?
Well, one of the things I was most excited about since I've moved states is I am now a fully 100% remote worker. And there was another book that I read, The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And this has been out, 10, 15 years maybe? And he talks about, get to remote working as quickly as you can. Finally did it. Yay. So what that has done is I've now retrieved back 2 hours every day of my time. And that is spent commuting, parking, doing all the stuff that you do in relation to work. And so I've been a remote worker now for almost 2 months. I did go away to Perth to visit some family, but it's now figuring out and slotting in different times of how I'm going to do things. So I go to Pilates every day. I go to the gym occasionally. And then that was happening in the afternoons. I want to put that in the mornings. And then I'm going to be writing in the mornings as well. So since I've been here, I've probably written maybe 3 or 4 times. And I would not, blame is not the right word. I would say I'm trying to figure out, okay, because obviously I do work. It has to be in the morning or in the evening. What is my mental energy and capacity in the evenings? Didn't work too great. So now I'm switching it back into the mornings. So it's just trying to navigate those spinning plates that we all have to do in our lives and just spin it. One, exercise and health is going really great, then I'm going to put up the other one and see how that goes.
That seems really positive. Yes. Dorothea Brand, the creative writing, she wrote a book that's considered a classic in creative writing instruction back in the 1930s. It's actually a very interesting book. I would recommend it to both of you. I don't know that it's that helpful in terms of your writing, but it is very interesting because she talks about the idea that you should write first thing in the morning when you get up. So essentially sit up in bed, grab your pen and paper. There's no time for coffee. There's no time to go to the bathroom. You just need to start writing, write straight away. And I think there is probably something to that. She also talks about meditation. She doesn't call it meditation. She calls it hypnosis because, again, it's the 1930s. So meditation wasn't really popularized in the West, I think, until around the 1950s and 60s. So that's very interesting. She says you should, grab a ball, look at the ball, then shut your eyes and keep looking at the ball, which is kind of a meditation technique, isn't it? But it's very interesting, and I would recommend to you at least that one thing of getting up in the morning and writing without getting out of bed.
I think it is a really good idea because when the time that I wrote, I did NaNoWriMo a couple of years ago now, and I was working at the time as well, and that literally I did have time for coffee. I got up, went to the coffee machine, made a coffee, and I sat down. My computer was there, everything was there, and just sat down. And you have just 2 hours, no one else is awake. And that is a huge contradiction if you're going to do that against the kind of common morning routines that high performance people talk about. They say you should get up in the morning, you should meditate, you go for a walk, you should have a cold shower, you should do all these things before you even sit down to work. Tried it, doesn't work for me, it's not conducive to writing. You kind of have to, while your brain is still a little bit fuzzy, because a lot of my story ideas actually do come from my dreams, while they're still kind of fresh and churning around, it's best to just sit down and smash that writing out. And I suppose as well, I don't know if it is a challenge, but I did go to a leadership and self-development masterclass yesterday. And one of the statements that a speaker said that really stood out to me was that you should not tie your identity and worth should not be tied to your results, but your continuity. And people just lack stickability, I find. And I mean, the younger generation, they're probably the longest thing that's ever stuck to is a 3-year degree. But writing a book and sitting down, that's a really long process. And I think that's why a lot of people struggle. Writing a first draft can be fast, it can be slow. Writing a second, third, fourth, fifth, this is a huge commitment. So I really like that. And I'll probably throw over to Patrick because I feel like I've been talking for quite some time.
Sorry, I really got to quickly use the bathroom. I'll be right back. I'm so
Well,
sorry.
that works. No.
Okay, so there's an example of what you're not meant to do when you first wake up in the morning.
Go to the toilet?
Yeah, no, you've got to start writing. Dorothy Brand says you should, and why not? Yeah, I think, I'm just going to keep the podcast going. We're just going to have a ceiling bit because, that's the kind of ramshackle, rough and ready podcast we are.
Rough and ready.
Rough and ready. I think you're making a very salient point, which is that, people talk about deadlines, and I find that an absurd idea with something that's creative. It's so difficult to know how things are going to go. You could be following, a path towards a deadline that seems quite orderly. And what could happen is you could have a burst of inspiration, which takes you off in a whole new direction. So you haven't had writer's block. You're still working hard, but suddenly your project takes on an entirely new shape, and you suddenly want to go back to back to basics and take it somewhere else. And that's a good thing, but of course it messes up your deadlines. So you were talking about, I think, continuity. Is it continuity? Stickability. Yeah. So that idea, I think, is the thing. If you can sort of say as a creative person that you do X amount of work every day, whatever the outcome of that is, then you're on the path. You're doing the correct thing, and the outcomes are very difficult to predict. And so it's a bit of a fool's errand, really. I think in the last podcast we were talking about, when Gareth plans, God laughs, and I think that's a very true thing. So I make no plans myself, except planning to be productive. What do you think, Patrick? Oh, wait. I say, Patrick. Has he took off his headphones, didn't he? This is why.
Well, I'm glad. Well, he's put himself on mute as well. Talking about sitting down and doing the work or planning to be productive, I have an essay that I want to read out, and I think it's so salient for our podcast. And Patrick has just joined us. I'm going to read out an essay because we're talking about stickability and actually doing the work as a creative and sitting down.
Not running off and having a toilet break. Yes, Shannon, over to you.
So this is an essay on the strangest loop. Things that aren't doing the thing. Preparing to do the thing isn't doing the thing. Scheduling time to do the thing isn't doing the thing. Making a to-do list for the thing isn't doing the thing. Telling people you're going to do the thing isn't doing the thing. Messaging friends who may or may not be doing the thing isn't doing the thing. Writing a banger tweet about how you're going to do the thing isn't doing the thing. Hating on yourself for not doing the thing isn't doing the thing. Hating on other people who've done the thing isn't doing the thing. Hating on the obstacles in the way of doing the thing isn't doing the thing. Fantasizing about all the adoration you'll receive once you do the thing isn't doing the thing. Reading about how to do the thing isn't doing the thing. Reading about how other people did the thing isn't doing the thing. Reading this essay isn't doing the thing. The only thing that is doing the thing is doing the thing.
You know what? I disagree with that.
Oh, fascinating. Tell me more.
Okay, so I think the exceptions are hating on stuff. We're not haters here on the Pleasure of the Text. We're lovers. And so hating is not a good thing. So I would exclude the hating, and also the visualizing yourself as being successful. I understand that people think there is some value to that, but I personally find that objectifying yourself and sort of objectifying tasks in that way isn't particularly helpful. When I used to teach writing classes, you would find that there were people who would talk about being writers, and I generally thought, we're in trouble. because, being a writer is writing. So again, doing the thing. But from what I've been reading and sort of experiencing this year, I think all the sort of things you do around the thing can be actually incredibly useful. So, much of creative work is done unconsciously. You wake up with ideas. You stop listening to the critical, conscious bit of your brain, and other ideas get to jump to the fore. But you do, with your conscious mind, you do direct yourself. And that can be incredibly useful. And you can also take an inventory of what you actually understand you're doing. What I used to do when I was doing my PhD was I would go to parties and I would find some poor unsuspecting person and they would say, so, what do you do? And of course they didn't, really want to know. And I would say, oh, I'm writing a thesis. Let me tell you about it. And then I would proceed to explain
pretty hard
it to
discussion to get out of.
It's a nightmare. You'd see their eyes glazing over, but in fact, they were just a wall to bounce off. And as you're explaining your ideas, sometimes they become clearer. And other times you go, wait a minute, what the hell am I talking about? It's a little bit like therapy. And so you actually, those sorts of things, writing a tweet like, I'm going to do this year. And then, people write back to you and go, how's that going? That can be very useful. It sort of allows you to interrogate your process as well as your ideas. So I think the general tenor of that quote is perhaps useful, but I obviously if you're procrastinating, but I think the creative endeavors have a lot of elements to them, including boring people at parties and other things. And those things are all actually quite helpful. So that's where I would land on that. Over to you, Patrick. What do you think?
It's really funny that we're talking about this because I was watching. I've been really getting back into bouldering and rock climbing again, just because of how much access there is to it out here. And I was watching this specific rock climbing YouTuber whose name is I'm going to mispronounce it because it's a Scottish name. Dave McLeod.
Oh, McLeod, the clan McLeod.
But I
just an interesting side note. That means son of ugly.
Son of ugly.
Yeah, well, Muck is son and Loud is ugly. Do you know I actually come from the clan McLeod, so I may be related to this person that I've just insulted.
You have a face for radio, Gareth.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Yeah. So yeah, McLeod, son of ugly. Anyway, back to you, Patrick.
And he was saying that oftentimes people or climbers that are either new or intermediate, they will tend to focus too heavily once they can on like specific finger training exercises rather than rock climbing itself. And if I'm misquoting him, I apologize, but I think his general message was that you want to create a synthesis of the two so that you're able to integrate the strength you're building on the fingerboard to what you're actually practicing while rock climbing, which are two interconnected but separate things. So if I'm building finger strength, if I'm reading how to become a better writer, I am stimulating certain neural pathways in my brain to somehow understand how to do this thing better. Or I am creating more mind muscle memory kind of strength in my fingers to hold onto a wall in a certain angle, a certain degree for a certain amount of time. But if I'm not then transferring that onto something that is an actual boulder problem, how will I ever make use of that? How will I ever integrate it into the greater patchwork that is either rock climbing or in what we're discussing? How will I ever take those things that I've read about on how to be a better writer and practice it and become a better writer? Not just, as Shannon said, reading about it and not doing it, but reading about it and doing it at the same time, so that there's this bridge that connects everything together so we can become better.
What do you think of that, Shannon?
Well, given that analogy, I want to know how you are going with the goal that you set at the start of this year.
Me?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's now how strong are your fingers because they're being bent backwards.
I actually can't remember what the goal was that I said at the beginning of this year.
Well, the first one was that we were going to catch up on a fortnightly basis and go through chapter by chapter because our writing journey is similar. You have finished the first draft of Tanaway and Emo, and I'd finished the first draft of mine, which, strangely enough, I cannot know that I don't remember the title of my own book. Anyway, moving on. Oh, From Dust. There we go. You can see how much I've worked on it. But yeah, what do you think happened from the start of the year to now, and what is going to be improved, or any plans?
What happened at the start of this year? Oh boy. I'm able to look back at the start of this year and be like, that was a very tumultuous time for Patrick. Through a lot of things. I think it was a lot of healing going on. I think it was me trying to figure out if writing was something that I actually wanted to even do anymore. And I think that not only what a healing process requires, is time and space away from things, but also not placing massive amounts of expectation upon myself or whatever it is that I'm doing. So in that sense, I think I've come quite a long way from being able to displace and not attach that expectation on what I'm doing, but simply to just do it. And knowing and understanding that it is as you said, Shannon, a process that will take many, many drafts to fully articulate what it is that I think, as Gareth has said, what is in your mind and what you are able to write out on a sheet of paper, so that that paper forms to the best of the ability of what it is you're trying to imagine in your mind. So I think with that, I find myself more willing to go back into the editing process and not see it as a failure when I am editing it, but looking at it from a perspective of, this is just another part of the journey where you get to have an opportunity to reformulate and kind of hone in on what it is that you're trying to say and what it is that you want this piece of paper to say to another person.
So you've come to the conclusion that you do want to write, because I feel like people are on the edge of their seats. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that's wonderful news.
The goal of meeting up fortnightly, I think, as Shannon had put previously, anytime there's a major move involved, anytime there is a huge change that happens, it is kind of like building that pyramid all over again, because when you try and move that pyramid from state to state, things will tend to topple over. And I think it's a process of regrounding and resetting that foundation so that you can build off or build on top of that foundation, what it is that you would like to fill your day with. So I think for this I'd say for the first 3 months I was down here, it was really trying to get an understanding of the area, the general vibe, people, what it is that I would want to be doing with my time. And I think my writing took a very self-reflective kind of path. So it was a lot of journaling. It was a lot of stream of consciousness excerpts. It was a lot of philosophy. And just kind of a way to reflect back upon myself in terms of what it is that I was doing. So allowing that subconscious to kind of bleed through. And now it's taking a more creative route, and I'm kind of using that as an indicator to be like, okay, I think I'm in a place now. I have that pyramid stacked up to where I can support myself as I try to write and try to edit again. So.
So it sounds like you're ready to possibly, I'm not trying to push you into this, but you're possibly ready to get back to the fortnightly catch-ups, because honestly, your output should not be the point. I mean, obviously your frame of mind does matter. If you just don't want to do it, then that's probably not the time to be doing it. But there's something to be learned from having nothing. Shannon and I'm certainly familiar with showing up and having nothing. And it's not a waste of time at all. Sometimes just talking about the challenges of having nothing can actually get you somewhere. I think the thing about showing up is, if you forget to put on your pants, show up anyway and trust that the other person won't call the police. So I wonder now that we're 6 months down the track, where that fortnightly catch-up could possibly sit, because for what it's worth, I think it would still have some value.
I will be, and I'm okay being this honest, because I know it won't I hope it won't be taken the wrong way. I think part of what it was that I was dealing with as well was like being hypercritical of myself, because I was able to see firsthand how much Shannon does in a day and how much she sticks to what it is that she does, and how that time space for her is so sacred and so non-negotiable that I was going like, why can I not do that? And then getting down on myself. And then I started noticing my writing was just not going anywhere because I was comparing myself to another person. And I'm not saying this at all to be like taking a stab or taking a critique or a comment on someone else's way that they do things at all. I think it is crazy how something as oh yes, this is going to be great because I'm going to be able to spend time around someone who is fully in this process of writing and editing and working a full-time job and has a partner and has 2 dogs that need to be taken care of. And like, oh man, if she can do it, I can do it. And I can learn so much of this. And I think the part that I didn't anticipate about myself, which I think is a part I've been working on for quite some time, is just how much I start to compare myself to another person to my own detriment.
That's fascinating. Look, over to you, Shannon. I feel like you should respond.
Well, first of all, thank you for being so honest. And I hope the audience is getting a lot out of this as well. I mean, there's a reason why the quote, like, comparison is the thief of joy, because it is. And it is a hard one, because you would hope that, not that I would ever say that, because that sounds like trumpeting my own horn, but you know how when someone's like, if I can do it, you can do it. And then you're like, yeah, that means I can do it. And you don't want the opposite to happen. So I don't know. What are your thoughts, Gareth?
Well, I think this comes down to possibly a misreading on Patrick's part, which is that from what I understand of both of your writing processes, I would expect Shannon to be more prolific or perhaps more seamlessly efficient at rewriting. Because I think that fits much more into her writing style in the first place. Patrick, from reading your writing and doing workshopping with you, you strike me as a very unconscious writer, which is not a bad thing at all. And it tends to help you get first drafts out. And I would say, and I may be wrong, but I would say that Shannon struggles a bit more to get her first drafts done compared to you. So they're sort of different competencies. So, going from first to second draft, there is a shift over to sort of the sort of conscious appreciation of what you've been doing, largely unconsciously. And yeah, no, I wouldn't expect you to be as quick or as confident in that process. But that obviously is a process that's extremely important for you to engage with because it's not perhaps so much of a natural competency. So I'm not really surprised by it. I think what I'm really surprised by is why you both didn't come to me and say, look, we're having problems in our relationship. Gareth, what would you suggest?
No.
And I would have solved it straight away for you, as one does.
With his big PhD.
So yeah, but that is what I think might be the thing. I think that the shift from first to second draft is a bit of a mountain for you to climb. But in terms of your craft, having done that, particularly with in collaboration with someone else, I think it would be very valuable. And yeah, you will find that you run into walls. I feel like I'm making a lot of climbing references, which I don't mean to make.
It's happening.
Punsville. But yeah, I think it's a shame that it wasn't a pleasant experience. But I think you would find that there's a lot of value in it.
I know that, and again, like me bringing this up, it's like it's nothing to do with, in this case, Shannon. It is everything to do with my own value of my own writing skills, my ability to stick to things that I set out for myself, as well as to understand that I don't need to engage in comparisons and I don't need to attach myself to those comparisons that my inner critic is building. And so that, and fully understanding that two people are going to be vastly different in the things that they are good at, and that it's simply just an opportunity to learn, but then also I don't think I really, how would you say this? I think it's because I had time away from that, and that we have moved different states and are no longer living together, that I can actually have that space to kind of realize what was going on, rather than just sitting there going like, I can't edit, I can't write anything new, why is this happening, kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's tremendously interesting, and obviously, it's good to be honest. I definitely think talking about writing processes, there's a lot of nonsense that's talked about and published around writing processes, and the sort of the ungraspable content of that. And I think it largely comes down to the sort of desire to lean on the idea of talent, because I think people find that a very flattering idea. And also because people are just being wildly dishonest a lot of the time. You've inspired me, Patrick, to be a little bit honest, because I've been thinking, do I want to talk about this on the podcast? And I haven't been certain that I do want to talk about it on the podcast, but I'm going to now. You've put your finger on the scale, Patrick. So whatever happens after this, it's because of you, my friend. But right. So, I mean, obviously, when I did the last podcast, I was watching it last night, and it was very interesting, I think, for lots of reasons. One of them being, I am very aware of how I appear on camera, particularly around that period. I seem very dopey. I would not be shocked if people thought I was stoned at times, but I wasn't, unless there's some sort of endorsement or sponsorship deal that can be gleaned from that.
Drugs are bad, kids.
Don't do it. Because I mean, I think so back in January when we did the podcast, I talked a bit about brain fog. And brain fog is a little bit like creativity in that it's shrouded in mystery and is a sort of an amorphous sort of concept. And I don't know if people watching this podcast, and there are some people watching this podcast, have noticed any differences in my demeanor. I can certainly see them when I watched the one in January. I did look very kind of sloppy and dreamy and a little bit slurry, although that may also just be a natural speech impediment. But yeah, so basically, since we did that podcast, I got a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD for the kids out there that like a shortened form of things. And, it's really difficult when you're sort of vaguely in the public sphere. You think, do I want to like reveal anything about myself? And is there any value in doing that? But I was looking at because at the time I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I was looking at what my goals were. And quite amazingly, I picked things that were the right things for someone with PTSD. And so I think there is some value in talking about that. So the three things that I said I wanted to do was start writing with handwriting, using constraints, and reading while looking up. And in that previous podcast, we talked about the idea of reading while looking up, which is when you put down the book, you continue thinking about it and you project yourself into the future and imagine where it's going to go, which is quite a creative way of reading. And most of us do actually do that. We're quite creative when we read, particularly good fiction. So I've been doing all those things. So yay for me. But I think it is useful. There have been quite a few writers in the history of Western literature who've sort of struggled with different degrees of sort of mental illness. And they've had some pretty fascinating techniques for managing that. So Virginia Woolf obviously was one. She had crippling self-doubts, and she had a problem with sort of sustained focus. So she would write short and she would write in a stream of consciousness way, very much sort of engaging with her unconscious creative mind. Sort of on the other side of the scale there, you've got Vladimir Nabokov, who I don't know if he ever self-identified as having mental illness, but if he didn't, I'm stunned. But he would write on little sort of flashcards, and he would write whatever he was writing, a little bit or piece, and he would shove it on a board and he'd mix them around to kind of find the shape of what he was writing. Raymond Chandler also did a similar thing to that, although he was much more linear, but he would actually write on little palm cards, and if there wasn't something that he liked on the palm card, he'd chuck it and start again. He was another man that definitely had some mental illness, because when he wrote his first novel, he typeset it so that it was perfect and ready to publish, which of course meant that he was changing the content of what he was writing so it would look good on the page. So, lots of writers work around various sort of mental health issues they may have, and a lot of writers have mental health issues of one stripe or another. So I think what I'd like to say on the podcast, seeing as I guess it is like it's a platform, isn't it, to say something useful and not just talk about Mario Kart, which would be my preference, is that you can kind of work around these things. So I have been handwriting, and I do find that more useful. It does activate more of your brain. There was a fascinating study done in Norway that was published in February, talking about the way your brain really lights up when you handwrite, as opposed to typewriting, where only tiny bits of your brain light up. So in terms of building cross connections, slowing yourself down, I would say that I'm actually quicker at handwriting than I am at typewriting. But generally the idea is that typewriting is faster. and you can just constantly delete. So you're doing it quickly, but you're also editing yourself constantly. Whereas with handwriting, you do tend to just kind of barrel forward, which is quite useful. So I've been doing that. And I've been...
Can I pause you there, Gareth?
Oh, please.
Because I do think it is fascinating, because Patrick, when he produces a first draft, it's all handwritten. Whereas now, obviously, in the editing process, it's now in the word processor. And that's, interestingly, where you've slowed down a bit, Patrick, and now you're finding editing is a lot harder. I don't know if it would make sense for you to transition back to pen and paper.
Yeah, I would actually think that would be probably a good thing to do.
Okay.
What you could do is use some technology to shove all your handwriting into a sort of a typed format. There's lots of great software for that now, and then edit it, write around it.
Okay.
Have slightly bigger margins and just write around it and attach. Get your stapler and go, okay, this bit's not working. I'm handwriting this bit. I'm stapling it on, and sort of work with that kind of thing. That would probably be a good approach.
Really quickly, I think you said something great, and I think it could be the title of something, Gareth, which is reading while looking up.
I wish I could claim it as my own, but it's not.
Oh.
No, it's a Roland Barthes thing, but it was a very sort of instrumental idea in my workshopping practice. And I do a lot of reading while looking up as a matter of course.
The podcast mascot.
I miss you so much. Chungus.
Okay, sorry.
I shut my door so we wouldn't have any animal interruptions at this end.
Well, I tried.
I saw the door open. I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
She worked away. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of writing where I'll just sort of take anything that happens to be in my mind. And what tends to happen is ideas recur and echo each other in ways that are beyond what I would consciously put together. So there's enormous value in sort of engaging with your unconscious mind when you write. And I think you do that, Patrick. I find your first drafts are very strong. And sometimes when you're doing edits, you are taking out bits that I personally would have kept in. And so actually taking an unconscious approach to your editing, and by that I mean specifically and practically handwriting your changes and allowing them to go where they go, even if they go a little off script. You may only want to change one line. You may find you end up writing a page. That's fine. I would approach it that way. I think you'll get much better results.
So would you say, Gareth, that you have achieved your writing goal that you set at the start of this year?
Yeah, to the extent that in 2023, outside of exercises for the podcast, I'd pretty much stopped writing altogether. So I've gone back to writing, which is good. And, I think working around your liabilities, people can do this creatively. And, if I ever say anything to anyone about writing, this would be the thing, that it is accessible, that there are ways into it, but you may have to adjust your approach. I would say this year's been a bit of a success. I may be wrong about this, Patrick, in which case I'm not going to seem tremendously clever, but my impression of you is that you tend to write long, that you've been much more interested in novels than short stories. You don't tell me yet. And that would make sense to me. So we'll see if I'm actually right. This is going to seem very silly if I'm wrong. That would make sense to me because novels, they say, and I think it's probably true, tend to be about character. There's far more character. I mean, we were doing a review of Our Share of Night, weren't we, Shannon? And something that Marian Enrique said was basically she had to write loosely, she had to write long, because she was exploring characters, and they're not story devices. So you can't just decide what they're going to be like. You have to actually jump into them and see where they take you, which again is an unconscious process largely. So yeah, I would say, on the record, that I would be stunned if you hadn't always focused on writing long, because I do agree with you that the emotional lives of your characters is a focus in your writing. Would that be true?
I want to say to a degree that's true.
That's very
kind. I want to say that I started out writing this is my best analogy that I can think of. Do you know those like miniatures for like Warhammer 40K or like any kind of like tabletop game that people paint and stuff like that? I think I would get halfway through painting maybe one or two different characters in a like room full of different characters that I always wanted to have, like that I always wanted to write about. And I think it's only been recently that I have been fully painting a smaller number of characters that I can greatly write about. And I get to the finish of that because I think the time that I was a little bit before living with Luke and Shannon, and the time that I was living with them, I think I pretty much wrote about like two books back to back, like the first draft of them. And I was like, whoa, what the heck? This is actually happening. I'm actually finishing a story. Ah! I don't know what to do now. Because up until that point, it had been maybe halfway getting through a larger story that I wanted to write. And so in that sense, I think I would write shorter stories because they were unfinished longer stories. But also I think recently, like if I give myself credit, I've been finding a balance between the two. And I think that's just because of what I recall Shannon talking about a lot was starting with short stories, really getting down what it is that you're trying to say with a short story, and from there kind of extrapolating perhaps to a larger story. And I would say I've been trying to use the short story as a device to better my understanding of what I want to take into the longer format of that style or that novel length writing.
It would be interesting to see the characters that you've sketched in smaller pieces, whether they exist as component parts, a bit like Inside Out, the film, the Pixar film. I'm just trying for more sponsorship. That whether there are elements of these smaller characters that recur in your longer work. Because the vignette is a powerful thing. Nabokov would agree. And he knows what he's doing. Sketching something, it may seem just to be an exercise, but often things recur. Again, going back to Chandler, it seems like I've planned what I was going to say and I haven't. Chandler would cannibalize his stories. And so he would, because he started off as a pulp fiction writer, so he'd be in the sort of monthly magazines, the pulps. And when he started becoming a novelist, he would take 3 or 4 of his stories and slam them together and make a novel out of it. And so different characters would merge together to form more complex and interesting characters. And I wonder if that will happen in your writing. It would be interesting to keep all your first drafts and notes when you're famous and go into the library and pour through them and maybe get a thesis out of it. Somebody may want to do that.
I think I can already tell you 3 motifs or themes that are already like very present within most of my writings that I've done. One of them is distance, one is the moon, and the other one is darkness. Those things are completely recurring in most every fantasy thing I've written.
And seem interconnected.
Absolutely.
How interesting. Now, Shannon, I feel like you've mentioned this to me, not on the podcast, but at other times, those themes in Patrick's work and the way that they, in some ways, reflect on your own work, I feel like we had this conversation. It could be a fever dream, but is that right? No, it's not right. Are you sure?
Well, in a
I remember
sense,
talking about time and dust and
time and space, but I wouldn't say to me, when I read Patrick's work, definitely distance and space, but mine is less like moon and stuff. Mine kind of explores the difference between what is real and what is not real, and past, present, and future, essentially.
I see. Like reflected light off a planetary body. Fascinating.
Right. Okay.
Fascinating.
Like a rainbow. Reflect, the rainbow road, and we're back here again.
Right.
No.
And you know, when you fall off the rainbow road, you often land on the surface of the moon.
No, a little Cooper comes and picks you up and puts you back on the rainbow road. And it happened to me multiple times.
You're jumping over the craters. I remember it distinctly.
And I'm just conscious of time. What are, moving forward, for the end of this year, we're almost done. I can't believe I went into the shop and they're already selling Christmas mince pies. It blew my mind. Yes. We're getting closer to Christmas. What are we planning, and what have we got planned, and what are our goals?
Patrick?
Okay. All right. I just thought of this one because I thought this idea would be really cool. I would love to make it a goal at least once a year, if this was a thing that you both wanted to continue, that we actually meet up in person and we record a podcast.
Ooh.
That sounds like fun.
Well, at the moment, Jetstar, thank you, Jetstar, for the sponsorship. It's got lots of cheap flights to Newcastle, Patrick.
I already booked one in Melbourne.
There you
go. But yes, I would be more than happy to go up to Newcastle and see both of you and do
or
something
even Sydney,
along those lines.
Because we can then go down to the Glebe bookstore and have fun down there.
Amazing. Ooh.
Could we podcast from Glebe Books? Wouldn't that be fun?
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Are you friends with the owner?
Not yet.
We can have it for like an hour and a half after closing time or something and be like, hey, we want a podcast in here. Oh,
what a wonderful idea.
Yeah, thank
I would be
you,
so
Patrick.
okay with that.
Goals, ambitions, plans that will fall apart inevitably, because that's what plans are.
Me. Good question. Plans. I would say. I think I've already accomplished a lot within a relatively short amount of time of moving to a new location. In terms of, I think I set out to find a routine that serves me, that allows me to move my body. So it's the rock climbing, yoga, and working out. And now that I have that, I think another thing would to be more routine and slowly introduce writing back into it, as well as editing. And that would be, I'd like to aim for at least once a week for maybe I want to give myself a grace period of 4 months just to see how that fits in with everything else. And then from there, kind of build up slowly towards a bigger goal of being able to write at least kind of, I would say I don't want to go too crazy and assume it'd be something like writing an hour or two in the morning, but at least be able to get 3 to 4 really good sessions a week of writing done and in there. And also really anchor into the editing and really build on this practice of noticing when to detach from that judgy inner critic And I think also reading more books as well. I have not read a whole lot of books ever since moving down this way. So,
I mean, Tasmania is kind of the Ireland of Australia. It's very green, isn't it? And I believe they have quite a few kind of. I mean, there's a strong literary community in Tasmania, much like Ireland. So yeah, that could be a good thing for you. You need to hook into that community. So what about you, Shannon? What are your goals for 2025?
I've already said mine, and we're moving on to you, Gareth.
I have PTSD. I don't remember what happened. Completely forgot. 2025.
Well, we are still in 2024, so the 5 months remaining.
Oh, well, okay. So, I mean, basically I suppose I have two goals. One is to actually start teaching my creative writing course. And obviously on the path to that, there are a lot of sort of preliminary goals. Like for the month of September, I want to read 30 creative writing books just to get across what is currently, the literature. So hopefully that'll all happen. And once that's done, I wanted to sort of throw myself into my fiction writing a lot more, because basically my brain is just focused on writing course. It's extremely distracting. So next year, what I would like to do is sort of get into much better fiction writing habits and get on with teaching this course, and sort of hopefully working with a community of new and emerging writers and helping them to sort of demystify the sort of the more magical elements of writing that tend to be shrouded in mystery and snake oil, dripping in snake oil. So I think those would be my goals. Keep my hair. I want to keep my hair in 2025, and I think that would be it, actually. And obviously, I suppose in terms of the podcast, we're hoping for 200 subscribers would be nice. So I think that would be my 2025 goals in a nutshell.
Very nice. We are at 109 subscribers. I do not think 200 is that far away. It always works exponentially, I've been told. So 1,000 might be the start of January 2025. Thank you so much for our listeners. I did want to take this time to give a big shout out to Patrick. Thank you so much again for joining us. The next podcast should be live, whether or not it's in a bookstore, all depends on Gareth making friends' abilities. And shout out to Gareth. You did mention off air one time that no one has mentioned how beautiful your thumbnails are. So Gareth spends hours every week / fortnight developing our thumbnails. It's actually one of the highlights that I receive as we're developing this podcast. So thank you very much, Gareth. And we'll be jumping on again to review at the end of this year how we went, resetting our goals and moving forward. I will see everyone, and we'll see everyone next time here at the Pleasure of the Text. Thank you so much, guys.
Goodbye.